Sunday broadcast here for YadaCoin. So, I was talking to somebody the other day, and I was telling them about YadaCoin, as I often do with strangers, and they said, "Oh, that's great. So, what's cool about your coin, right? How is it different?" And it's like a very blunt question, but I think it's a question that needs clarification, right? Because, like, what's the simple answer to why is YadaCoin cool? Well, if you just think about it on a technical level, you cannot get rid of YadaCoin records, right? So you can't get rid of the records. You can't get rid of the transactions. So once a transaction happens and it's entered on the blockchain, it gets duplicated all over the network. Okay? So that makes it so that you cannot delete a transaction. Now, transaction contain relationship data, they contain communication data, they contain all kinds of things, right? So in that regard, when they can't be deleted, the transactions basically become like this indestructible record. And that's very beneficial, right? So if you have an audience, for example, and you want to keep that audience, and you have like all these friendships on the Yada blockchain, that means that anytime you make a friend, that friendship is going to be on a transaction, and that transaction is going to be entered into the blockchain, and then all of the nodes on the network are going to contain that friendship. That means that every single node all over the world has that friendship, and all of the nodes that are playing by the rules and haven't altered the code will have that friendship. And so there's no way to get rid of the friendship once it's been entered onto the blockchain. And that's very powerful. That means that nobody can delete your contacts. Nobody can delete your relationships. Nobody can get rid of you. Nobody can deplatform you. Nobody can, get rid of your identity on the internet. That's incredible, because any other centralized service that's controlled by any sort of authority can be taken and altered and manipulated, and you can effectively be erased from whatever platform that you keep your audience on. That's pretty crazy. So how do we do that? So on the Yada blockchain, we do a thing called, we do a few different things. So we sign the transactions using Bitcoin's, it's not Bitcoin's, it's a curve that Bitcoin uses, and it's called SecP256K1. And so what we're doing is basically taking the data on a transaction, taking your private key, and then generating another point on a plane, essentially. So we're using the curve on a plane, and then we're using your private key to then generate a new point on that plane that only that private key could get to, right? And what that does is allows you to use a public key. So you'll see like an address and a public key in your config files. So what you use those for is to verify that point was generated using that curve and that private key. So it's the consistency between the private key and the public key, your address, and your previous transactions that allow us to verify your identity and verify that your transactions are legitimate and that we're able to authenticate you and your activity without actually getting any private information about you, like your social security number or state issued ID or anything like that. It's all done anonymously. So that's that part of things. But then what do we do after that? So we're verifying transactions with the digital signature algorithms, and then beyond that, we are encrypting the actual messages, right? So we don't want you to be able to view everything that's going on the YadaCoin blockchain just as like a public user. So somebody who's like perusing the blockchain data, we don't want them to be able to see, usernames or friendships, friendship details, messages. We don't want all of those to be able to be read in plain text on the blockchain. So we encrypt those. And how we encrypt those is basically we take an encryption algorithm, and it is a what you would call a symmetric key. So asymmetric keys are when the encrypting key is different from the decrypting key. And so we use asymmetric keys. So if we back up for 1 second, we use asymmetric keys when we actually make a friendship, right? So when you add a contact, make a friendship, whatever, we're using an asymmetric key because the friendship is encrypted with a public key, and then the decryption happens with the private key. So the recipient is going to be decrypting the friend request from the blockchain, and they're going to get notified about that friend request, right? So you can actually pass around your public key, and then those people can use that public key to encrypt the friend request and place that encrypted friend request on the blockchain, and then you will get notified about that because we also use that information to generate a like a global relationship identifier, which your YadaCoin wallet knows how to retrieve already. So it's going to be scanning for any friend requests coming in using your public key. So once it does that, it decrypts a friend request using your private key, and then boom, you have a friend request. And the way you complete that relationship is to use the person's public key that sent you the friend request, and you encrypt your friend request, or since it's a return friend request, it's like a friend acceptance, and you will send your request back to them, and that will count as like a completed relationship once that transaction is entered into the blockchain. And they will then, of course, receive it in the same manner, just like the request to you. They will be scanning for that relationship identifier, and then they'll decrypt the message using their private key, and they will be able to see you in their friends list. So that's the asymmetric key side. And then you have the symmetric key. So what you're doing here is using what's called an X25519 key exchange, and we use elliptic curve digital signature Diffie-Hellman, and this will use a symmetric key, and this symmetric key is basically the hashed values from your private key and your username, and then we sort of hash those together to create this relationship identifier for both of the users, right? And that becomes like your Diffie-Hellman private key, your secret key, your shared secret, right, that you both have. And you're both going to be exchanging messages and encrypting your messages, whether it's on-chain or off-chain. You're going to be using that key to send each other messages. This also allows you to change that key, so you can also do key rotation, and so you're not constantly communicating under the same key, for extended periods of time. There's just a lot of cool features that you can have with this kind of configuration. So we have indestructible records, which means that you can't lose your audience, you can't lose your contacts. Then we have secret friend requests, right? Encrypted friend requests. So people can't see who is requesting who. And then we have encrypted relationships. So once you encrypt and send the request, and then you accept it. All that's encrypted, and that's all on the YadaCoin blockchain. And nobody can see who is requesting who. Nobody knows what's going on, essentially. That's all hidden. All you see is that there are transactions taking place. You can actually use a separate wallet to generate social activity for another identity with a different private key. This is all possible already. We're already doing this. And then from there, you have your relationship created then, and then you do the key exchange, the DeFi-Hellman, and essentially what that's all about is, well, that gives you the private encrypted communication, right? So DeFi-Hellman is basically just using powers in math to come up with the same number on either side. And you can exchange public information, right? You can exchange a public number with the other person. So it's like this large public number that you can share out in the open, and then they can share a number with you. And then when you use like this hidden number, and then they use their hidden number, they're both corresponding off of the number that you got from the other person. And then when you add those powers on each side to the original numbers, you both end up with the same key. And so it's a really clever way to establish a shared key when you can't actually physically give somebody a key, or the transport method between the two parties is assumed to be compromised. So YadaCoin does all of this. This is already there. It's really amazing stuff, and I don't think it's something that I really pay enough attention to, or at least brag enough about. No other chain does this. None of them. No other chain really cares about this kind of stuff. They don't pay attention to authentication. They don't pay attention to encrypted social networks. They don't pay attention to encrypted communication. They just really focus on privacy and making their transactions anonymous and all of this stuff. They don't really talk about how to have privacy, but also a social structure on top of that privacy. And so with YadaCoin, you have the anonymity part, but you also have the social structure, and we've just executed on that really well. It's really a unique project. It's the most awesome thing that I've ever built, for sure, in my whole career as a developer. So that's basically like a brief synopsis of YadaCoin, the technology, and that's really kind of all I had this week. So in case you were wondering how this all works, and what you're investing in, and or your time and energy and stuff like that, believe me, I've invested my entire adult life pretty much into this, half of my adult life, I suppose, into this. So I've been working on this probably about the last 12 years. And so, I've learned a lot, and it's really come together in the last 2 years, I'd say. It's really, really advanced, and I'm really happy with where it is. So if you guys have any questions about any of that, I know that was kind of a lot. But if you want to hit me up on Discord, Twitter, Reddit, or whatever else is out there, don't hesitate. All right, everybody, that's Sunday broadcast. It's Matt Vogel for YadaCoin. See you later.